What is up, guys? Chris Stolle here for another Chris Stolle podcast. You're getting two in one day because, well, the first one obviously was about video games and all, which is cool, which is great. I'm excited. I like it. But we got to talk about Ukraine and the United States involvement. I grabbed two videos off of YouTube for us to check out here. I haven't watched them yet. This is a blind review of them. From the news sources. I honestly I grabbed them and forgot to figure out where they came from. But so either way, the credit still goes to the news reporters and everything else. But I want to hear what they're going to say about what's going on, and I'll give my 2 cents during it and afterwards. So let's go ahead and get started.
Pentagon Press Secretary Kirby talked about that Russian convoy stalled miles outside.
No, we're not going to do it that way. Hold on. We're going to do it through video capture. All right, so I'll pull it up first. Hold on. Get it ready here. I apologize. I'm not even going to edit it out. I wanted to do it that way, but the problem is I wouldn't be able to hear it, so I can't react to it. So I got to do it this way. Bear with me a moment. All right, so I'll pause that, and then I will pull up the panel. Here we go, and then I will full screen it, and then we will play it and react and go from there. All right, so bear with me.
Kirby talked about that Russian convoy stalled miles outside the city. I just want to play some of that for our viewers.
That convoy that we talked about also has been stalled and slowed, and quite frankly, a big reason for that has been the Ukrainian resistance. They were able to hit some of those lead vehicles and get it to stop.
What's the latest that you've been hearing and seeing? Well, the Pentagon, Anderson, saying that that not only is it stalled, but that it hasn't really moved, obviously, in the past few days since the weekend. It's stuck about 15 miles outside of...
I apologize for this. I don't know what's going on with that. Hopefully it'll straighten itself out. Fuck is going on? Oh, it'll just shut itself off. That's fine. Yeah, who cares? I wasn't recording or anything. Tell me the videos are broken. That they didn't download right.
Pentagon Press Secretary Kirby talked about that.
Let's see if I can get it to...
stalled miles outside the city. I just want to play some of that for our viewers. And former officials talking about them being sitting ducks out there, and so we have seen these Ukrainian forces managing to pick off a number of those vehicles. Given the fact that they are so stretched out and that they are relatively far from supply, we also know that the Russians have had a hard time refueling and getting food, and so the Pentagon believes that they are reassessing, that it may be too soon to say that they aren't making much progress. You still have a formidable amount of firepower in terms of the troops, the armored vehicles, and the artillery that are in that convoy, and so there is a real concern that they will play a significant part of an encirclement of Kyiv, which the Ukrainians believe is still Moscow's main priority. They said that just today, that the top priority is still to encircle Kyiv and to break through the resistance. So not only do we have that convoy that is north of Kyiv, we also have Russian forces to the west that the Ukrainians claim have been pushed back. We have seen some success by the Ukrainians against the Russian forces there, and the Ukrainians believe that they are calling up more resources to replenish their troops and their weaponry there. And Anderson, that is a very important point, because we keep hearing about the successes of the Ukrainians against the Russians, but the fact of the matter is that the Russians have a much deeper reserve of power than the Ukrainians do. That's why the Ukrainians have been calling on everybody, not just in the country, but from outside the country, to come help them fight. The Pentagon believes that some 92% of the pre-positioned combat power of the Russians is now in Ukraine, and that they still have the vast majority of that combat power still in reserve. So despite the fact that the Russians have not made much progress here in Kyiv, there is still so much they can do. And Anderson, the belief is that that because they may be frustrated on the ground, because they are getting pushed back on the ground, that they may step it up from the air. So there is real concern, real fear that we may soon see more significant aerial bombardment, not just of
it is scary.
Of other areas by Russia's helicopters and jets. Anderson. Fred, in Moscow, NATO, you've been watching Russian weapons and manpower for Ukraine now for this entire invasion.
Wow, I'm surprised CNN is actually reporting about the cluster bombing.
Using cluster bombs in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is saying everything is going according to plan. What's the latest that you've been seeing today?
Look, and the NATO Secretary General obviously also said today that NATO believes that the Russians have been using cluster bombs. The Russians have said nothing about that so far, but the statements that we're getting from the Russian military and also from the Russian government remain pretty unequivocal. They keep saying that they are not targeting civilians, not targeting civilian areas. And
Don't do that. Don't do it again.
To harm. Now, what we've been hearing from the
There we
Russian
go.
military is they accuse the Ukrainian military of essentially hiding weapons in civilian areas, and as the
Of
Russian
course.
government and the Russian military put it, using civilians as human shields in some of those areas as well. So that's the official line that we're getting from Russia. And as far as those munitions are concerned, obviously, Anderson, one of the things that we saw when we were down in Belgorod, right across from the front line.
No, I'm sorry. I got to stop that a minute. I can't stomach that. He's been targeting civilian areas. He has been using cluster bombs and stuff like that. You've seen it on the news over and over again. We've seen the videos themselves. All of us have. He's trying to justify it by turning around saying that these people are hiding weapons. Now, the only justification he would have to even saying that is that the Ukrainian government turned around and implored their citizens to take up arms against the Russian army, and the municipality, police, and all that handed out weapons to civilians who volunteered to defend their country. The only justification Vladimir Putin would have of saying that they're hiding or stockpiling weapons is using the fact that the civilians are taking up arms against the forces of Russia. This is absolutely sickening. This is the stupidest fucking... you can't justify anything Vladimir Putin says. The day he lost all credibility wasn't even when he invaded Russia or Ukraine. When he invaded Ukraine, that was a them problem. I mean, again, I'm with Ukraine. I stand for Ukraine. Russia should never have done it, but because they did it at that moment in time, it's just like, okay, Russia's pushing for, they want the territory they believe is theirs back. I don't agree with it, but whatever. When he started dropping cluster bombs, when he started fucking threatening nuclear arms at high alert, you're a madman. You're a madman who's looking to intimidate through fear. You're looking to destroy Western civilization and ideals, capitalism, liberty, democracy, republics, anything like that. Look, the last thing in the world I want is World War III. But I think that's where we're heading. And unfortunately, it's going to be the only way to take care of this guy, in my opinion, is there's going to have to be a push. He's not stopping with Ukraine. If Ukraine falls and goes under Soviet rule, he is going to go after all the other Bolsheviks. He's going to... he's already teaming up with China. China's going to go after Taiwan, and we're going to be forced to get involved. And I don't want that to happen because we're talking about nuclear-powered countries with communist and totalitarian ideals who probably have an itchy trigger finger. And the reason I don't want it, there's two reasons. One, I don't want it because of the fact that nobody wants... like I said in my other video, I love the Fallout video game franchise, but I don't want to live it. And that's what's going to happen if we wind up in this war. But the other reason I don't want this war is because the United States does not have strong leadership to fight the war. We don't. I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. Joe Biden is not the president to handle this situation. Kamala Harris is not the vice president. Nancy Pelosi is not the leaders we need to handle this situation if this situation goes into a full-scale war, a world war. They are not the leaders we need. They are not the leaders who will do what needs to be done. I fear for Ukraine, but I fear for the rest of the world as well. Let's continue.
Was the Russians move a rocket launcher towards the front line that uses or that shoots thermobaric tipped rockets, and that's certainly something that's been criticized by the United States. We can't obviously confirm whether or not the Russians actually used that rocket launcher, but we do know that it was moved towards the front line and is obviously stationed in that area, or was stationed in the area around the Kharkiv front line. At the same time, though, Anderson, as the Russians say that they are not causing any civilian casualties and that everything is going according to plan, as Vladimir Putin said, they are also cracking down on critical speech towards this operation. Today, there was a law that was passed by the Russian.
Wait, there is no Ukrainian civilian deaths. I saw a video of a 6-year-old who was killed in an apartment bombing by the Russians, and I think the last reported I think 2 days ago, like the last bombing and all. It not in Kiev, but the second largest city. I think it was reported of something like 300 uh, non-combatants dead in Ukraine. But yeah, he's not targeting civilians. There's no civilian casualties. Fucking piece of shit.
Lower house of parliament and then the upper house of parliament as well, seemingly trying to fast track all of this, which essentially makes it illegal to say anything critical about the Russian military and this operation, or anything that would sort of induce sanctions against Russia. And the penalties are pretty massive. It's up to 15 years in prison, or around $13,000, which is a huge amount of money here in.
I did hear that too earlier today, listening to reports while I was at work. I did hear that he is cracking down on people in Russia who are protesting the war. Anybody who speaks out against what Russia is doing, what Vladimir Putin is doing, he has been arresting those protesters and everything else. So I mean, he's silencing his critics. He's making sure that everybody is on page with him and what he wants to do. And if you're not in line, then you go away.
Russia. Vladimir Putin still has to sign that law, but it certainly is already something that's having a chilling effect on journalists here in this country. Of course, many of the critical media already have been shut down here in Russia. The BBC, for instance, today said it was ceasing operations in the Russian Federation. In just a couple of minutes before we went to air, Novaya Gazeta, of course, the managing editor of which just won the Nobel Peace Prize, is saying that it's taking down all of its content related to Russia's military operations simply because they're not sure whether their journalists are going to have to go to jail for a very long time if they keep reporting on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all obviously aimed at journalism and accurate coverage, because right now everything that's imposing sanctions on Russia are the statements of Vladimir Putin. So he's actually going to be subject to that law. Alex Marquardt, Fred Plankton, appreciate it. Now back to Anna in New York.
And Anderson, this is a growing global crisis when you think of all the refugees that are now ending up in other countries. More than 1 million Ukrainians have fled the escalating conflicts of war and are escaping to neighboring countries. CNN's Sarah Steiner is at one such crossing just inside Poland along the border with Ukraine. Sarah, what are you seeing today?
We're in Medica, Poland, and just over my left shoulder is the border with Ukraine. We are seeing families, some of whom just crossed by us as you were talking. I'm going to have Jerry just show you. They have finally gotten some transports to get out of the frigid cold. You can see that they are carrying very few things. Most people have just one bag or one backpack. Lots of children. Some kids who are in 9 or 10 coming over the border. It's slow when it comes.
That
to
was
numbers.
on their end, not the video
It's
itself.
all day and all night long, people coming through here, and now Poland has about half.
Aw, little kid.
1 million plus people who have made their way from the war in Ukraine into another country. Poland bearing the brunt of that because of its proximity and because Poland has opened its doors much wider, allowing people, for example, not just to drive, they can walk, and however they can get here.
God bless Poland for that. I want to stop a minute and say that. God bless Poland for that. They could choose to turn a blind eye, but they remember what it was like during the Nazi invasions during World War II, the beginning of World War II, when they wound up under Nazi control and everything. They know what Ukraine is going through because they went through it themselves. And instead of turning a blind eye to it, they opened their arms, they opened their borders and said, come on over, get your family safe. We'll take care of you the best we can. God bless Poland for that. I just got to say that. Go ahead.
They will be allowed over the border. The EU see something very interesting, and that is we are seeing not only people streaming out of Ukraine, but we are seeing a few people going in. Listen.
We picked up a few guys and we were ready to join the fight. The little story, I was a sniper in Afghanistan twice, and I went against ISIS as well in 2015. It was my second time as a volunteer, and we just met up at the airport. And we need to push a lot of people at the front very quickly.
So there were several men that we noticed walking towards the border and then going in. They were speaking French. There was someone who was French-Canadian, and there were people who were from the UK, from England. All of them said that they were veterans of war and that they wanted to just go and fight. Fight for Ukraine, fight for, as they said, freedom, fight against Russia and against what they call fascism and communism. They said this is their duty, and that they are going in unpaid to try and help the Ukraine people. One by one, they said they had a plan and that they had someone meeting them on the other side of Ukraine.
It's all so interesting, so tragic. Sarah, stay with me for just a sec. I know.
What's tragic about that? I applaud that, absolutely. I know they didn't say there was any American soldiers or volunteers, but you know, I've always stated this about the American military, is that you take an oath of enlistment, and even when you get your DD-214 and you retire or you opt out or you're honorably or dishonorably discharged, doesn't matter. That oath of enlistment does not have an expiration date. So good on these soldiers here. I don't know what their oaths are or anything else, but the fact that they looked at it as their duty to fight against communism, to fight against fascism, to stop Russia from bulldozing over Ukraine, even though that's not their country and they could easily sit in their own country and be safe and secure and everything else, they'd rather take up arms and defend innocent people from this tyranny. God bless them. I'm all for it, 120,000%. I wish there was more people in the world like that.
You're having some issues with your signal, but I've been able to hear you loud and clear. I just want to ask you then, there are some 500,000 people who are then crossing the border, are there in Poland right now. What happens to them after they cross? I mean, longer term, not just within 24 hours, but you know, in the weeks to come, where are they going? What's going to happen to them?
That's the thing, and that's why you see so much panic on people's faces, so much sorrow on people's faces, because frankly, most of them have no idea. We met a family last night who literally had the clothes on their back. They had nothing. They had panicked. There were bombings very close to them. They had gone into a shelter and literally ran out of that country as fast as they could get here, and they got here eventually by train. And it was just a matter of trying to figure out who they could go to. They said they were going to a friend's house, the friend barely even knowing that they were going to show up the same night. There isn't a lot of planning that you can do. I mean, this has only been going on for a week and a few days, and so people don't know. Some of them have been stuck in a train station for a couple of days trying to figure out their lives. One thing, though, we are hearing is that there are lots of people here in Poland and around Europe, Germany, Denmark, who are telling people they are welcome, they can come and stay in their personal homes, and they'll give them transportation.
Very cool. All right, I'm going to stop that one, opt that one out, and we are going to go right into the next one here. This one here is Lindsey Graham talking about take this guy out, talking about Putin. It's the only way to stop Russia. We're going to take a look at this one, and then we'll have a topic of conversation. Let's pull it up and see what we see. By the way, you saw in the background, I'm actually rendering down another video, which we'll be releasing today as well. So.
An alarming incident seems to now be under control. Officials say a fire at Europe's largest nuclear power plant is out after shelling by Russian forces who have now taken control of the site.
Now that assault comes as the invasion entered its second week with no end in sight.
Now, just real quick for the people listening, do you realize how dangerous that is? They bombed a nuclear power plant. It was caught on fire. Now, nuclear energy is safe. It's clean. You know, it's good for the environment. There's nothing bad about nuclear energy except if that reactor melts down or is cracked and radiation is leaked or something like. They were literally in my mind, just the fact that you bombed a nuclear power plant, which by itself is safe, but you're bombing it, you're breaking its structural integrity. You possibly can rupture its tanks and its radiation shields and everything. You were looking to create a nuclear explosion and nuclear fallout without launching a nuclear missile. This was an end around to a nuclear strike, or an attempt end around to a nuclear strike. You cannot convince me of otherwise. That is fucking dangerous. And if nothing else has convinced you that this guy is a war criminal, that Putin is a war criminal, if nothing else convinces you that that's what he is, bombing a nuclear reactor in hopes that it would blow up, because why else would you bomb it, is absolutely sickening.
NBC's Bree Jackson is in Washington with the latest.
A fire at Europe's largest nuclear plant in Ukraine extinguished this morning following an attack by Russian forces. Another sign of the path of destruction left behind. President Biden spoke with the president of Ukraine about the attack after announcing more sanctions on Russian oligarchs.
We're going to continue to support Ukrainian people, direct assistance.
There are growing calls
Then to reopen the Keystone Pipeline and stop taking oil from Russia.
U.S. imports of Russian oil.
I don't want U.S. dollars to be funding this carnage in Ukraine.
The administration cautions gas prices will spike even higher and pad Russian President Vladimir Putin's profits. Republican Senator Lindsey suggesting the Russian people get rid of him.
We need to take this guy out by any means possible.
The Russian ambassador criticizing Graham's comments as a call to terrorism. President Volodymyr Zelensky says he wants to speak directly to his Russian counterpart.
I think I have to talk with Putin.
Putin claiming the military operation is going as planned as Russia captures its first major city. Secretary of State Antony Blinken with NATO allies in Belgium pledging support for Ukraine.
We will defend every inch of NATO territory.
With attacks ramping up, nearly 4 million Ukrainians are expected to flee their homeland. Negotiators agreed to open humanitarian corridors to evacuate citizens. With a Russian convoy roughly 15 miles outside the Ukrainian capital,
Jesus Christ.
there's warning the worst is yet to come. And during meetings with NATO leaders and European allies today, Secretary of State Blinken plans to discuss efforts to help refugees from Ukraine. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson for NBC News.
All right, that was a short one. I got to talk about this one because nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. We all want to see Putin put down. He's a rabid dog. He needs to be put to sleep. I absolutely agree. I don't think this ends until Putin's dead. I do agree with that. However, calling on the Russian people to kill their leader, that's dangerous territory. That's very, very dangerous territory. If he gets taken out by a Ukrainian sniper, that's the cost of war. If one of his own people betrays his leader and kills him, although justified, especially because of the leader's actions and behaviors, that could spark a serious civil war within Russia. Let me explain. There are people who are against what Putin is doing. There are people that are protesting, getting arrested, everything else, because they do not agree with the direction Putin is leading Russia into. However, there is also fanatics, military leaders, and the oligarchs and everything else, however you fucking say the word. They are on the side of Putin. So if some general ballsed up and put a two-tap in the back of Putin's head, that will be seen as treason, and you will have a rebellion and civil war where the Putin fanatics will steamroll over their own citizens. That is just way more bloodshed. I want to see this end. I want to see Ukraine left alone, and I want to see Putin put in his place, which is 6 feet underground. But I don't think getting the Russian people to kill their own leader is the correct way to do it. I think that'll do more harm than good and kill a lot of innocent Russians. And yes, I'm standing up for the Russian people. I don't want to see them caught in the crossfire of a power struggle and political civil war over the ideals of Putin versus non-Putin. I think the best way is either Ukraine or NATO, or if this turns into a world war, which I really don't want, but if it turns into a world war, then any of the allied forces that go against Putin, one of them put him the fuck down. But no, I would not recommend at all a citizen of Russia, even for the right reasons. Don't do it. It's going to harm your country more than it's going to help. But that's my opinion, guys. I absolutely agree with the fact that we do need to end Putin's reign. We need to end Putin as a person, because he's not a person. He's a monster. And I do want to touch on this. We were talking about heavy sanctions against Russia, which really ain't doing shit, because most of Europe, like 60% of Europe, and a good majority of us, the United States, like they said, we're paying Russia for oil, for our energy resources. We need to stop that. The only way you're really going to hurt Vladimir Putin and his regime is to fuck his economy. And many people have referred to Russia as a gas station, because that's what they do. Their major export, their major money coming in is the world's oil supply, including us here in the United States. We could be energy independent. We already were. Reopen the Keystone Pipeline and then start offering Europe an alternative to Russia's, shit. Yeah, of course, is it going to make all of our economies go up a little bit during the transition? Are we going to see spikes in gasoline prices? We're seeing it already, but will we see it until the transition happens and we get the pipeline rerunning and all the stuff coming from our own domestication? Sure. But you know what? I'd rather pay the extra $1, $2 per gallon while rebuilding our own infrastructure and then paying, shipping out to other countries that have been Russia dependent upon oil and gasoline, and then watch it drop and watch Putin fucking scramble because he has no money anymore, than to pay $1, $2, $3 more per gallon and funding this madman's fucking bid for world domination. If I could speak directly to President Biden right now, those would be the exact words I would say. Open the goddamn pipelines and cut off their support, Russia's support and funding from our hard-earned dollars. I do not want to fund his war. Nobody else wants to fund his war. Shut it the fuck down. And let's start being energy independent again. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section down below. And of course, I will catch you on the next Chris Stolle podcast. Until then, guys, have a good week. Stay safe.